She looked at me with a smile and said, "You should be with girls your age." I could have agreed, but instead, I whispered the truth, "But they're not you." From that moment, everything between us changed. I still remember the first time she said it. The evening air was soft, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass from somewhere down the street. I had stopped by her porch like I often did, leaning against the railing while she sat in her favorite chair, the golden glow of sunset falling across her shoulders. She had that way of looking both relaxed and graceful, like the day itself slowed down just to keep her company. We had been talking about nothing in particular, the neighbor's new dog, the stubborn flowers in her garden, when her smile curved into something playful. She tilted her head slightly, studying me with those knowing eyes, and said with a quiet laugh, "You should be with girls your age." Her words were light, but they carried more weight than she probably intended. I felt the brush of her hand against my arm as she leaned forward to place her mug of tea on the little table beside her. The touch was brief, casual, but it left a trail of warmth on my skin, a reminder I couldn't ignore. I could have laughed it off, could have nodded and said she was right. That's what she wanted, maybe even what she expected. But instead, the truth slipped out before I could stop it. My voice was lower than I meant it to be, almost a whisper. "But they're not you." For a moment, the world seemed to go still. The faint clink of wind chimes across the yard, the hum of cicadas in the distance, all of it faded beneath the silence that stretched between us. She didn't speak, and I didn't rush to fill the quiet. Her eyes lingered on mine, and I saw the flicker of something she quickly tried to hide, surprise, maybe, or the faint tremor of emotions she wasn't ready to name. She looked away, her smile softening into something more guarded. I noticed the way her fingers tightened around her mug when she picked it back up, how her shoulders lifted slightly as if bracing herself. And yet, despite the shift in her posture, she didn't ask me to leave. She didn't laugh again. Instead, she simply sat there, her eyes fixed on the horizon, the last light of day painting her face in shades of gold and rose. I stood beside her, heart unsteady, knowing I had crossed an invisible line. What had been playful and safe now carried a different weight, one that neither of us dared to put into words. That night, when I finally walked back to my place, the echo of my reply followed me. "But they're not you." Words I couldn't take back, and truth I wasn't sure she was ready to hear. After that night, things were different. Not in any dramatic way, she didn't slam her door or refuse to look at me, but in the quiet, subtle ways that cut deeper than words ever could. Her curtains stayed drawn more often, the soft glow of her lamp only visible in the faintest slivers through the fabric. When I passed by her porch in the evenings, the chair where she always sat with her tea was empty. Even when she did step outside, our conversations felt shorter, careful, as though she was measuring every word before letting it go. It was the kind of distance you couldn't mistake for coincidence. I told myself I should have seen it coming. That maybe I'd been foolish to let my feelings slip through in that single, unguarded moment. And yet, no matter how much I tried to reason with myself, the ache in my chest didn't ease. Nights became heavier. I'd find myself sitting at my own window, staring at the faint glow behind hers, wondering what she was thinking. Did she regret ever letting me close? Did she wish she'd never smiled at me the way she did? I'd sip at my coffee until it went cold, waiting for a shadow to pass by her curtain, waiting for a sign she hadn't pulled away completely. Sometimes I caught glimpses, her silhouette moving past the window, the faint sound of her wind chimes when she opened the door for just a moment. And once, when I was locking up my bike, I caught her looking across the yard at me. Her eyes lingered only a heartbeat before she looked away, but it was enough to stir something restless in me. That glance carried more truth than all her careful silences. But I didn't chase after her. I didn't press. Instead, I learned to carry the quiet, even when it felt heavier than I could stand. I noticed little things I had overlooked before, how empty the evening sounded without her laugh drifting across the fence, how the street seemed dimmer without the soft glow of her porch light. What surprised me most wasn't just how much I missed her company. It was how much I missed her presence, the way she filled a space simply by being in it, the ease of her voice, the comfort of knowing she was nearby. And so I waited. Waited with the hope that the distance wasn't permanent, that beneath her hesitation, she still carried the same unspoken tension I did. That maybe, just maybe, she was struggling as much as I was. It had been weeks since that evening on her porch, weeks of silence that stretched thin but never fully broke. I told myself I was getting used to it, that maybe this was how things were meant to be. And then fate, or maybe something gentler, placed her in front of me again. It was at the grocery store, of all places. I had wandered down the produce aisle, pushing a half-empty cart, my mind somewhere else entirely, when I saw her. She was standing by the peaches, head tilted as if deciding which one deserved to be taken home. Her hair was swept back loosely, a few strands falling against her cheek, and there was something disarmingly ordinary about the moment, and yet, I felt my heart stumble. For a second, I almost turned away. The ache of distance was still fresh, and I wasn't sure if she wanted to see me. But then she glanced up, and our eyes met. Her first expression was surprise, a small widening of her eyes, followed quickly by something softer. She smiled, not the easy, playful smile I remembered, but one touched with hesitation, as if she wasn't sure how much she was allowed to give. "Shopping on a Saturday, too?" she asked, her tone casual, though I caught the faint tremor underneath. I nodded, stepping closer, though not too close. "Yeah. Guess we both had the same idea." The space between us felt charged, even as we spoke about the simplest things, which fruit looked ripe, which bread was fresher. At one point, we both reached for the same peach. Our hands brushed lightly, and for an instant, everything else in the store seemed to fall away. Her skin was warm, the touch so brief it could have been forgotten, but neither of us forgot. We continued walking down the aisles together, our carts moving in an unspoken rhythm. She laughed once, a quiet, genuine sound, when I joked about not knowing how to cook half the things I picked up. The laugh eased something in me, pulling me back into the comfort I had missed so much. But beneath the ordinary chatter, there was an awareness neither of us could ignore. Each glance felt heavier than it should. Each silence between words seemed longer, more deliberate. By the time we reached the checkout, she looked at me with a faint smile, her eyes holding mine for a second too long. And though she said nothing more, I knew this wasn't the end of our story. It was only the beginning of something neither of us could quite name yet, but both of us could feel. The rain had been falling all evening, steady and unhurried, like the sky had decided the world needed washing. I was halfway through a bowl of instant noodles when the knock came at my door. At first I thought I imagined it, no one ever visited this late, but then it came again, softer, almost uncertain. When I opened the door, she was standing there, her hair damp and curling slightly at the edges, a container balanced carefully in her hands. Drops of rain clung to her coat, glistening under the porch light. "I made too much soup," she said simply, her voice warm but a little hesitant. "Thought you might want some." For a moment, I just looked at her, caught between surprise and relief. The distance that had stretched between us for weeks seemed to dissolve right there on my doorstep. I stepped aside, letting her in. Inside, the storm became our background music, rain tapping gently on the windows, distant rumbles of thunder rolling through the night. She placed the container on the counter, then glanced around like she hadn't been in my kitchen 100 times before. "I didn't mean to intrude," she murmured, brushing a damp strand of hair from her face. "You're not intruding," I said. And I meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. We sat together at my small table, steam rising from the bowls as I ladled the soup. The rich scent filled the room, and for the first time in weeks, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was gentle, comforting. At one point, as she passed me the spoon, her hand brushed mine. Just a fleeting touch, skin against skin, but it carried the warmth of something I had missed far more than I could admit. She laughed softly when I burned my tongue on the first sip, the sound easing the last traces of tension. Her presence filled the space in ways words couldn't. The way her eyes softened when they lingered on me, the way her laugh blended with the rain, it all felt achingly familiar, like slipping back into something I'd been missing without knowing how much. When she finally stood to leave, I walked her to the door. The rain had slowed, but droplets still clung to her coat. She looked at me, her expression unreadable, and for a moment I thought she might say something more. But instead, she gave a small smile, tender, almost fragile, before stepping into the night. After she left, the kitchen still smelled of her soup, and I sat back at the table, the storm fading outside, realizing I felt more at home in that single hour with her than I had in all the quiet weeks without her. The evening was cool, the kind of night where the air feels heavy with unsaid things. She sat on her porch with a mug of tea cupped in her hands, steam rising into the fading light. I hesitated at the edge of her steps, unsure if I should intrude, but when she glanced up and offered the faintest smile, I knew she wanted me there. I took the seat beside her, the wood creaking gently beneath my weight. For a while, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, listening to the low hum of crickets and the occasional car passing down the quiet street. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but I could feel something pressing against it, something she was holding back. Finally, she exhaled, her breath carrying a tremor. "Do you ever think about what people would say?" Her eyes stayed fixed on her mug, fingers tightening around it as though the warmth could steady her. I turned slightly, watching her profile in the soft glow of the porch light. There was a fragility in her voice I had never heard before, hidden beneath the strength she usually carried so effortlessly. She continued, softer now. "It's not just the age difference. It's the way people talk. The way they look. I've spent so much of my life being careful, and now I feel like I'm standing on the edge of something I can't explain." Her words settled between us, heavy and real. I could see the conflict written in her every movement, the way she avoided my eyes, the way her shoulders tensed as though bracing for judgment that hadn't even come yet. Without thinking, I reached across the small space between us and laid my hand gently over hers. Her skin was warm, her fingers still curled around the ceramic mug. I didn't squeeze or press, just let the quiet weight of my hand tell her what words couldn't. She froze for a moment, as if deciding whether to pull away. But then, slowly, her hand relaxed beneath mine. Her eyes finally lifted, meeting mine with a vulnerability so raw it made my chest ache. "I don't want to feel this way," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. "But I do." I held her gaze, letting the silence stretch because nothing I could say would matter as much as her knowing I understood. The porch light flickered slightly, the night air cool around us, but between our joined hands, there was only warmth. For the first time, it wasn't just unspoken tension. It was truth, fragile but undeniable, resting in the space we both finally dared to touch. Summer nights had a way of making the world feel softer. The streets were quiet, the air warm against my skin, and the glow of the street lamps painted everything in a faint golden haze. We walked side by side, our steps unhurried, as though neither of us wanted the night to end. She wore a light dress that moved gently with the breeze, and I found myself stealing glances, memorizing the way the lamplight seemed to cling to her. She was talking about something ordinary, a book she had been reading, but I barely caught the words. What held me wasn't her voice, though that alone could steady me, it was the nearness of her, the way each step brought us closer without either of us realizing it. We paused at a corner where the light was brightest. She turned to me, her eyes catching the glow, making them shine in a way that made my breath falter. "Your collar's crooked," she said softly, almost to herself. Before I could respond, her hand lifted, fingertips brushing against the fabric near my neck. The touch was delicate, absent-minded almost, but the effect was anything but casual. Her fingers grazed my skin as she smoothed the collar, and I felt my pulse quicken, my body alive with the awareness of how close she was. Her face hovered only inches from mine, her focus shifting from my collar to my eyes. The world narrowed, no sound of crickets, no hum of the night, just the faint warmth of her breath mingling with mine, just the pounding in my chest. For one unbearable, perfect moment, I thought she might not pull away. I thought she might close the distance, and everything we had been dancing around would finally shatter into truth. But then, almost as if she caught herself, she laughed quietly. The sound was soft, a little shaky, like she was laughing at her own daring. She let her hand fall, brushing against my arm as it slipped away, leaving a trail of warmth that lingered long after. "We should head back," she murmured, her eyes darting away, though not before I caught the storm that lingered there. Desire, hesitation, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name. I nodded, though my throat felt tight, and we began walking again. But everything was different now. The air between us carried the weight of what almost happened, of what both of us felt but neither dared to cross. The street lamps lit our path, but it was the unspoken fire between us that truly guided the way. The days after that walk felt different. Everything between us had shifted, though neither of us had spoken about it. We carried the weight of that almost moment under the street lamps like a secret, one we both pretended wasn't there but felt with every glance, every pause, every quiet exchange. One evening, I sat on my porch, the air warm and still, cicadas humming their endless chorus in the trees. I wasn't expecting company, I rarely did anymore, but then I saw her. She was walking slowly across the yard, her steps unhurried, her arms folded loosely as though steadying herself. She stopped at the bottom of my steps, and for a moment, she just looked at me. The porch light caught the curve of her face, the uncertainty in her eyes. Then, without asking, she climbed the steps and lowered herself onto the chair beside me. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, but not like before. This time it felt like something gathering, like a tide waiting to break. Finally, she turned to me, her voice low, almost fragile. "I can't pretend I don't feel it anymore." Her words hung in the night air, trembling but steady enough to cut through everything we hadn't said. I felt my chest tighten, not with surprise but with the overwhelming relief of hearing aloud what I had known all along. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I let my hand find hers where it rested on her knee. Her fingers tensed at first, then slowly unwound, curling around mine as though they belonged there. We sat like that, hand in hand, letting the quiet speak for us. The cicadas hummed, a breeze stirred the leaves, and the world seemed to shrink until it was just her and me, and the fragile truth we finally allowed to exist between us. She leaned gently against my shoulder, her hair brushing my cheek, her head settling like it had always belonged there. The warmth of her body against mine was steady, grounding, and yet it carried that same quiet spark that had been building between us for so long. No words of explanation, no promises, no defenses against what others might say. Just her hand in mine, her presence beside me, and the simple certainty that whatever came next, we had chosen it, chosen each other. The night stretched on, the stars scattered above us, and for the first time in weeks, I felt no doubt, no hesitation. Only the steady flame of something real, something worth holding on to. And I knew, she felt it too. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more slow burn age gap romances. Share your thoughts below. Would you have been brave enough to say, "But they're not you"?